I normally don't review apartments, but I ended up spending 2 weeks in sunny Barcelona this summer renting one-bedroom Airbnb apartment, and it has a lot of quirks that I haven't quite seen before. So in this video, I'm going to review it and show you around and share my experience of staying in this place. First things first, what is Poble-Sec? It's a small neighborhood here in Barcelona. It's about 15 minutes from the beach and also from the touristy center of La Rambles. It's right behind me, right here. And mostly architecture is 19th century, but I don't believe my building is that old, but you see some quirks and then you're not quite sure. Now, even before you get to the apartment, you're greeted by this bizarre, long and very tight staircase in this tiny hallway. The crazy thing is actually tightens quite a bit towards the top. So if you like carrying large bags or, well, large anything, just forget about it. I arrived from San Francisco with a 50-pound bag and I literally had to lug it one step at a time because there's no other way to get there. And then I was chatting to a Spanish lady who lives in the building, and she seemed to be very interested in me because she learned I was a tourist. That's a good first day. And just before we get to the door itself, and it's always dark here, and at first I was like, well, you have to use iPhone flashlight to see anything. However, there's a light switch over here. Turn it on and you think it lights up the door right away, but it doesn't. The actual light is located on the floor above mine, which is quite strange and has a lag of 2 seconds after you press the light switch. And when it finally lights up, you could barely see the lock, but it's better than nothing. I was convinced at first that it doesn't really work, but that is how it's been engineered. And just as we climb the super tight staircase, there's a window that faces the courtyard of the building, and that looks like it hasn't been touched since World War II. Lots of garbage, cement, dust, and just dust in general. Lots of apartment windows and doors that have been walled up with doors, bricks, and grills. And I was told by my friend that the government will do this if the apartments were abandoned to prevent homeless people to live in there and then claiming it's theirs, because apparently when they do it, it's really difficult to evict them, legally at least. And just before we get into apartment, you can see this very strange white door handle located in the middle of the door. Normally you have it right by the lock, but not in this case though. And in fact, I've seen other apartments that are much newer here in Barcelona, and all of them have an outside door handle in the middle. Why? Because I think it makes you a really hot Spaniard. And we haven't even opened the door yet, huh? That's pretty cool. Welcome to Poble-Sec. First thing when you notice when you open the door is kind of shocking how nice the whole place looks like, especially after staring at a half-abandoned part of that building just a moment ago. But the whole apartment has more than enough space for one person. The living room is bright, bedroom is small but livable, and bathroom looks very good too. And you might have noticed it has a teeny tiny balcony that I will show you just in a bit. So no bad after all, right? Well, that was my first impression when I just moved in 2 weeks ago, but then I started noticing some little quirks everywhere. If you look at the ceiling, you can very clearly see this large wooden planks that support it. It's in the hallway, the bedroom, and the bathroom. And I can very clearly hear when someone is walking above me, which tells me that this building is either made mostly out of wood or has some wood and concrete. But noise isolation is not amazing. This is the first apartment building and I've seen that I could actually very clearly hear people doing stuff outside, and it's very obvious. Now, I'm not sure if it's fully made out of wood or not, but this is definitely a bit weird considering that mostly houses are made out of wood, not apartment buildings, but here we are. And now we're going to move on to the bathroom because there are a few things I want to show you that are really quite interesting. We're going to start with the shower because it doesn't have a door here. It only has a curtain, which is of course not enough to prevent the water from spilling on the floor. Even though the actual floor of the shower is angled, it's not really enough. Now, these guys are very lucky because the water pressure from the shower is not strong enough to generate a mini tsunami. But of course, if you could imagine if it was, the whole thing would have been flooded. But it sort of works, but it's really strange. I think what designers thought is that, look, you might get bored every once in a while in Spain, so we'll find out a task for you every time you shower, and they succeeded. If we look at the kitchen sink, what does it remind you of? A soup bowl? A giant bowl? Well, exactly. It really is shaped as just like a mini jumbo bowl, and that's really what it is. It's a pretty odd shape, but what's really more weird is this thing is actually mounted to the standard rectangular table. Looks like they only had a rectangular table and a jumbo sink, and then they decided to DIY the whole thing. A strange combination indeed. No mas. Now we're not quite done yet. If you look at the windows, they look pretty standard, modern, nothing special, but that's until you look at the hooks. The hooks that you use to close the windows from the inside, they look like a complete joke. And that's really what you have to rely on to protect yourself from Spanish invaders. I've seen such hooks in the buildings that are built in the USSR in the 1960s, but the whole combination of the windows like this and these tiny little hooks looks just quite comical. This place has officially the tiniest balcony with seats and a table that I've seen to date. Just look at how small it is. My host thought you could have breakfast here, but of course, because it's so tiny and there's zero privacy and there's a lot of people around, but at any point in time I'm surrounded by 20 dudes, I decided to pass on that offer. And another interesting item can be found over here. It's a kettle. Of course, what's so special about it? It's a standard bare bones cheap kettle. Yes, except that it heats up the water in the fastest time that I've ever seen it. I used a lot of expensive and cheap kettles myself. This thing, and I've timed it with my stopwatch, heats up the water in 1 minute 50 seconds flat. And I'm talking about 1.5 liters of cold water. Literally, you just start it and it starts to simmer right away. And in fact, I don't know who manufactures this thing. It says here TCM. I don't know who that is, but this thing is insane. Although actually needless to say that it doesn't auto stop for some reason, just because I think maybe the manufacturers thought this was just an unnecessary luxury because you're just gonna be around for a minute, but that is a really crazy thing I've never seen before. And the last thing I wanted to point out to you is the door handle. It's quite a strange one because you would think that you turn it to the left and it opens, but here it doesn't. You need to turn it in the opposite direction to the left and then the door opens. So quite a strange design and totally backwards, but you've seen some quirks around here now. I'm not quite surprised. And I would say this one is kind of pretty standard. Another interesting thing that I've noticed is that all the instructions in this apartment are written in English, which of course makes sense because that's probably what Airbnb targets for the tourists. But all the literature, magazines, and flyers for Barcelona are written in Spanish here. So I think that what hosts are probably thinking is your Spanish is going to get strong enough in one day and you'll be able to speak Espanol like a real Spaniard. I don't know if that actually makes sense, but I just made it up on the spot. And so that is the apartment I stayed in Poble-Sec for the last 2 weeks. It's a bizarre combination of a 19th century quirks with modern touch renovations that make it really cool. And the whole area, I have to say, is extremely noisy. There's a lot of noise coming from a street cleaning car from the bottom. And pretty much at any point in time, there's somebody cooking, yelling, screaming, playing music. So if you don't, and I'm being pretty serious here, if you don't have industrial grade earplugs, forget about getting any good night sleep here. In fact, Spanish people don't go to bed until 11 or 12 a.m. on the weekday, and that stretches to 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. on the weekend. And that's pretty normal actually to walk around on the weekend at 10 or 11 a.m. and actually not see any people around because everybody's sleeping. It's of course a siesta lifestyle, and I have to say, I really liked it. And in fact, if you like good food, hot girls, architecture, you like history, and know a little bit of Spanish, you will almost certainly enjoy Barcelona. But be prepared to go until 2 or 3 a.m. because that's a cultural thing. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and let me know what was your favorite quirk in this place, and please leave a comment down below. And if you have been to Barcelona, what was your opinion? Please let me know your opinion. I'd be curious to know. Thank you, and consider subscribing for more videos like that, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. I found a